We're now joined by Scott Irwin, agricultural economist here on the Urbana-Champaign campus of the University of Illinois. Yesterday, the United States Environmental Protection Agency updated the RVOs for the RFS, or really the obligations gallons, that will be used in the United States. Biofuels, things like ethanol blended into the gasoline supply, biodiesel sometimes made from soybeans, also blended into the diesel supply, some advanced biofuels as well. What'd you find when you took a deep look at what the U.S. EPA released?
I think that there's two important different ways to look at the numbers in the release. The first is what was released on paper as the mandates, and they look very good in the sense of the corn ethanol mandate was kept at 15 billion gallons. The advanced mandate was increased, and also in 2020, a nice further bump up in the proposed biodiesel mandate. So those all look good. But the real action is actually below the surface, and that has to do with this issue of small refinery exemptions and how many are given, and then how they're accounted for in the future standards. That's where the real action is. It's different than in the past, where the numbers that come out on paper don't tell the whole story.
This is because the exemptions actually recalculate what usage has been or could be.
Right. It's a little tricky, but the key issue is first the size of the exemptions, which we don't really know exactly, but based on news reports from last week and earlier, when it was reported that the EPA was considering 1.5 billion gallons of reallocation, then that's a pretty good estimate of what the EPA was expecting in terms of the exemptions denominated in terms of number of gallons of ethanol. That would be, in 2019, potentially a direct waiving of the mandates of 1.5 billion gallons. So it's not a small number. But that didn't have to be the case. Again, this is where you have to get further below the surface in the details. And this is the issue everyone's been talking about lately, called reallocation, which in the past it's been EPA policy that if you give those 1.5 billion gallons of small refinery exemptions today, that we would account for them in the future by basically tacking those on to the obligations of the larger refiners. So at least in year two, there wouldn't be any net loss of obligation. And that's the really big news out of this announcement, is that the EPA chose what I will call a scorched earth policy regarding reallocation of the small refinery exemptions. Not only, Todd, did they basically zero out any reallocation, there's none, which is completely contrary to their past precedent, to kind of throw salt in the wounds for those that disagree with that position. They had this little kicker that they were not even going to consider commentary on this issue. So it's a remarkable thing, Todd. They said, on the matter that is clearly the most important part of the release, which is this issue of reallocation, the EPA said, we're not going to take or consider any commentary on that crucial matter. As far as I can remember, in the decade or so I've been following the EPA and all the regulatory pronouncements about these issues, I can never recall the EPA saying, we're not going to even consider comments on a crucial policy question. It's just absolutely remarkable and stunning.
This is written right into the text of the release from EPA. I don't remember how many pages long it is, outlining this.
86.
But it is a long proposal. and a little paragraph that you have to really read to catch. But the idea that a proposal, which goes up for open commentary, is part of it is not actually open for commentary. It seems extraordinary.
Well, and I'm not even sure that they'll be able to get away with that under our administrative rule laws that we have in the U.S. It seems like that could be challenged in court. That it's easy to establish that was the most important policy decision that the EPA had to make for this rulemaking, and they basically said, no way, no how are we going to listen to anybody, and we're just going to charge ahead. I'm not sure that they will be able to make that hold.
You have long said that the rule on ethanol is that Senator Grassley rules. Can he rule here?
That's an interesting question. If the zero reallocation holds, then this will be a major defeat for the ag interest and Senator Grassley, because we will have gone to a situation where the small refinery exemptions function effectively as a form of general waiver authority for the EPA to roll back the mandates. And clearly, Congress did not explicitly give that authority to the EPA. So my view is, and again, obviously I'm not a legal expert, but I don't think that that will hold up in court. It's obviously going to be challenged, and I expect it to be eventually tossed out.
You say this proposal, while it shows the 15 billion gallons, really gets rid of what you call the North Star of the RFS, the domestic forcing domestic consumption of 15 billion gallons of ethanol.
That is, whether the EPA can zero out reallocation or not, there are lawyers who think that they have the legal right to do that. Even if they do, it clearly contradicts the legal North Star of the RFS, which is it is a market forcing domestic blend mandate. That is the overriding North Star principle. So when there's conflict in the law, you go with the North Star. And it's easy to see that not reallocating small refinery waivers in particular directly contradicts that and gives the EPA a means to roll back the mandates.
Thanks so much.
Always a pleasure.
That, of course, is Scott Irwin, agricultural economist here on the Urbana-Champaign campus of the University of Illinois.